What if I told you the moment that could change XRP forever has already happened? And most people didn't even notice. Not on the news, not on TV, not even trending online, but quietly, behind the scenes. A line was drawn, and that line changes everything. Because for years, crypto has been stuck in one big problem. It wasn't technology, it wasn't speed, it wasn't even volatility, it was confusion. No one really knew what crypto was. Was it a stock, a commodity, a currency? And because of that, big money stayed away. Think about it like this. If you are managing billions of dollars, you don't take risks on something you don't fully understand legally. You need clear rules, clear definitions, clear safety. And crypto didn't have that until now. Something just shifted in the background that most people missed. Regulators have started to quietly define what crypto actually is. And XRP is right in the center of this shift. This is not just another update. This is not just another headline. This is the beginning of clarity. And when clarity enters the market, money follows. Let's break this down in the simplest way possible. For more than 10 years, crypto lived in what we can call a gray zone. It didn't fully fit into traditional finance systems. Stocks have rules, commodities have rules, currencies have rules. Crypto had confusion. That confusion was the biggest wall-stopping institutions. Not technology, not adoption, just uncertainty. Now here's where things get interesting. Regulators like the SEC and the CFTC have started to give guidance that separates crypto into categories. And one of the most powerful categories is this: digital commodities. This is huge, because once an asset is called a commodity, everything changes. Let me explain. A security depends on a company, a promoter, or someone promising profit. A commodity depends on supply, demand, and its own system value. Gold is a commodity. Oil is a commodity. Bitcoin, also treated like a commodity. And now, XRP is being placed in that same conversation. That is not a small detail. That is a massive shift. Because for years, XRP has been surrounded by legal uncertainty. Even after court wins, institutions were still unsure. They weren't scared of XRP itself, they were scared of the legal risk. And that is what just changed. When regulators start saying clearly that an asset is not a security, it removes one of the biggest fears in the market. Suddenly, exchanges feel safer listing it, investors feel safer holding it, institutions feel safer building on it, and developers, they can finally build without worrying that everything might be labeled illegal later. This is what unlocks markets. This is where survival turns into growth. Because when rules become clear, money starts moving. And here's the part most people are missing. This is not just about XRP. This is about the entire crypto system growing up. For the first time, we are seeing a structured language forming around digital assets. Things like digital commodities, stablecoins, utility tokens, tokenized assets. And that matters more than you think, because markets run on structure. You cannot build global finance without clear definitions, and you cannot bring institutions without infrastructure. This new framework is like building roads before traffic arrives, and trust me, the traffic is coming. Now here's where XRP becomes different from most other crypto assets. XRP is not just about holding value, it is about moving value. Fast, cheap, global, and that changes everything. Because moving money across borders is a trillion-dollar problem. And XRP has always been built to solve that. Not in theory, but in real-world use. Banks, payment providers, and financial systems need speed. They need low cost. They need reliability. And XRP offers exactly that. But before, there was always one problem: regulation. Now imagine removing that barrier. Suddenly, banks can use XRP without fear. Payment systems can integrate it. Financial networks can adopt it. That is a massive unlock. And when technology that already works gets regulatory clarity, adoption doesn't grow slowly. It accelerates. But this is just the beginning, because what happens next is where things get even more interesting. We are not just talking about usage. We are talking about financial products, ETFs, derivatives, institutional investment vehicles. And once those start building around XRP, everything changes again. But before we go there, think about this question. If XRP is now moving from uncertainty into clarity, what happens when institutional money finally steps in? Now here's where things start to get really serious, because clarity alone is powerful, but clarity combined with institutional movement, that's where markets truly change. Let me explain something most people don't realize. Retail investors, they follow trends, but institutions, they create them. And institutions don't move based on hype. They move based on rules, structure, and long-term strategy. So when we start seeing regulatory clarity around XRP, and at the same time we see institutions quietly preparing, that is not a coincidence. That is alignment. And alignment is where real momentum begins. Think about it like this. For years, big financial players have been watching crypto from the sidelines, not because they didn't believe in it, but because they couldn't safely enter it. They needed clear custody systems, clear compliance rules, clear legal definitions. Without these, they simply couldn't deploy serious capital. But now, those pieces are starting to come together, and XRP is sitting right in the middle of it. Let's talk about something very important. When an asset is classified as a commodity, it becomes much easier to build financial products around it. This includes things like ETFs, exchange-traded funds, derivatives, structured products, institutional investment vehicles. And here's why that matters. Because these products bring liquidity, and liquidity is what drives markets. Let me break it down simply. When more financial products exist around an asset, more people can invest. More money flows and prices become more stable. Big players feel safer entering. This creates a cycle. More products, more liquidity, more capital, more growth. This is what we call a financial flywheel, and XRP may be entering that stage right now. But there's another layer to this story that most people are ignoring, and that is who is in control of regulation. Now that XRP is being treated more like a commodity, the responsibility shifts more toward the CFTC, and this is important because the CFTC operates very differently from the SEC. The SEC often focuses on enforcement, meaning they act after something happens. But the CFTC, they focus more on principles and frameworks. They try to create systems that guide behavior instead of punishing it later. And for institutions, this is exactly what they need. They don't want surprises. They don't want sudden legal changes. They want predictable environments. Because when you're managing billions, you cannot rely on guesswork. You need to know the rules of the game before you even step on the field. And for XRP, those rules are finally becoming clear. Now let's take this one step further, because something else is happening at the same time. While regulation is becoming clearer, infrastructure is also being built. And this is where things get really interesting. Ripple has not been sitting still. Behind the scenes, they have been building an entire ecosystem, not just a token, but a full financial system. We're talking about custody solutions, liquidity systems, payment networks, stablecoin integration, institutional partnerships. This is not random. This is strategy, because institutions don't just need an asset. They need an environment. They need systems where they can hold assets securely, move funds quickly, stay compliant, manage risk. And Ripple has been building exactly that. Now, here's something that should catch your attention. We are starting to see connections between Ripple's ecosystem and major financial players. Names like MasterCard are entering the conversation. And this is not small. MasterCard is one of the largest payment networks in the world. If a company like that starts aligning with blockchain infrastructure, it means something big is coming. Because large institutions don't experiment for fun. They prepare for the future. And the future they are preparing for looks very different from the past. Think about the direction finance is moving. Faster transactions, lower costs, global accessibility, real-time settlement blockchain enables all of this. And XRP is designed specifically for one key function: moving value efficiently across the world. Now ask yourself this: if global finance is evolving in this direction, and XRP is already built for that purpose, what happens when the system is ready to adopt it? This is where things start to connect, because we are not just seeing technology, we are seeing timing. Regulation is becoming clearer. Infrastructure is being built. Institutions are preparing. And when these three things come together, change doesn't happen slowly. It happens exponentially. But let's be real for a moment. This is not a straight line. Markets don't move perfectly. There will be doubt, volatility, criticism, reinterpretations. That is normal. Every major shift looks messy in the beginning, but what matters is the direction, and the direction is becoming clearer. We are moving from confusion, clarity, speculation, utility, isolation, integration, and XRP is moving with that shift. Now here's something even bigger to think about. This is not just about price. This is about positioning, because in the future financial system, certain assets will become foundational. They will act as settlement layers, liquidity bridges, collateral systems, and XRP is already being positioned for that role. Which brings us to the next big question: If XRP is becoming part of the financial infrastructure, how big could this actually get? You might miss the bigger picture, and the bigger picture is where the real story is hiding. What we are witnessing right now is not just a crypto update, it is the early stage of a new financial system being built. Slowly, quietly, but very deliberately. And XRP is not just part of it, it is being positioned right at the center of it. Let me explain. For decades, the global financial system has worked in a certain way. Money moves slowly, transactions take time, there are middlemen everywhere, and every step adds cost, delay, and complexity. Now imagine replacing that system with something faster, something simpler, something that can move value across the world in seconds. That is what blockchain is trying to do. And XRP is designed exactly for that purpose. Not speculation, not hype, but real-world utility. Now here's where things get even more interesting. At the same time, this technology is evolving. The world itself is changing. Global finance is becoming more connected. Countries are trading more. Digital payments are increasing. And liquidity, the movement of money, is becoming more important than ever. Because in a connected world, the ability to move money quickly is power. And this is where XRP fits perfectly. It acts as a bridge between currencies, a bridge between systems, a bridge between old finance and new finance. Now let's connect this to what we talked about earlier. Regulation is becoming clearer. Institutions are preparing, infrastructure is being built, but there's one more piece of the puzzle: tokenization. This is something most people are not paying attention to yet. Tokenization means turning real-world assets into digital assets. Things like real estate stocks, bonds, commodities, all being represented on blockchain. Why does this matter? Because once assets are tokenized, they can move instantly. They can be traded globally. They can be settled in seconds instead of days. And they need a system to move that value. That's where assets like XRP come in. Because XRP is not just fast, it is designed to handle liquidity between different systems. Now think about the scale of this. We are not talking about millions. We are not talking about billions. We are talking about trillions of dollars moving across the world every single day, and even improving that system slightly creates massive value. This is why institutions are paying attention, not because of hype, but because of efficiency. Now, here's something very important to understand. Institutions don't think like retail investors. They don't chase quick gains. They focus on long-term infrastructure risk management, regulatory compliance, stable returns. So when they start looking at XRP, they are not asking, will this pump? They are asking, can this become part of the financial system? And for the first time, the answer is starting to look like yes. Because now, regulation is becoming clearer, legal risk is decreasing, infrastructure is expanding, partnerships are growing, and when all these things align, adoption becomes possible. But let's go even deeper, because something else is happening in the background. The world is slowly moving toward a digital economy. Banks are exploring digital currencies. Governments are testing CBDCs. Companies are integrating blockchain payments. Everything is becoming digital. And when everything becomes digital, the systems that move money must evolve too. You cannot run a digital economy on slow, outdated infrastructure. You need speed, efficiency, interoperability, and this is exactly where XRP has an advantage. It was built for this world before the world was ready for it. Now the world is catching up. And that is why this moment is so important, because this is the point where technology meets timing. And when that happens, things move fast. Now let's talk about Ripple for a moment. Because XRP does not exist in isolation, Ripple has been building an entire ecosystem around it. We are talking about on-demand liquidity systems, cross-border payment networks, stablecoin integration like RLUSD, custody, and institutional services. This is not random. This is preparation. Because when institutions enter, they need more than just an asset. They need a full system, and Ripple is creating that system. Now add to that the involvement of major players like MasterCard. This is where things start to feel real, because when traditional finance and blockchain start connecting, that is when adoption begins. Not through hype, but through integration. Slow, steady, but unstoppable. And this is how major financial shifts always happen. They don't explode overnight. They build quietly until suddenly everyone realizes the system has changed. Now here's the most important part of all this. We are still early. Even though things are moving, we are still in the transition phase. Regulation is not fully complete. Markets are still reacting. Institutions are still preparing. But the direction, that is becoming clear. We are moving toward a system where digital assets are normal, blockchain is integrated, global payments are instant liquidity, moves freely, and XRP is positioned right in the middle of that system. So now, the question is no longer, does XRP have utility? The real question is, how big will that utility become? Because in the final part, we're going to bring everything together. We'll talk about what this means for the future, what could happen next, and why this moment might be remembered as a turning point.